Concept of assessment. Assessment is a systematic procedure for collecting information that can be used to make inferences about the characteristics of people or objects. Systematic procedure. Assessment involves a structured and methodical approach to gathering data. This data collection is focused on specific characteristics of people such as skills, knowledge, attitudes, or objects like products, systems, processes. Make inferences. The information gathered through assessment is used to draw conclusion or making judgment. These inferences help in understanding the abilities, performance, or qualities of the subject under assessed. Analysis and interpretation. Assessment involves not just collecting data but also analyzing it to derive meaning. This interpretation is crucial for providing context and understanding the significance of the data. Assessment is broader than measurement but narrower than evaluation. Relation to measurement and evaluation. Measurement is a part of assessment process and refers to the quantification of attributes. It provides raw data such as test scores, ratings, or counts. An assessment goes a step beyond measurement by analyzing and interpreting this data to understand what it indicates about the subject. Evaluation is a broader concept than assessment. While assessment focuses on understanding and describing specific attributes, evaluation involves making value judgment, often comparing outcome against a standard or objective to determine worth or quality. So, assessment is a systematic approach to collecting, analyzing, and interpreting information to make informed judgments about specific characteristics of people or objects. It plays a key role in both educational and organizational context, where understanding and improving performance or outcomes is critical. The functions of assessment. Number 1, detecting function. Assessment monitors all activities throughout the evaluation process from planning to result estimation. It helps in tracking performance and guiding improvements to achieve desired outcomes. It detects all the activities during the assessment. From making plans to estimating the result, all activities are closely watched. It also helps in improving the performance and achieving desired result. Making decisions. Teachers use assessment data to make informed decisions on what needs to be improved, focusing on enhancing student learning and performance. They have to decide what has to be done for improvement. All the decisions related to assessment has to be taken by the teacher. It helps to focus on improvement. Screening. Assessment identifies potential issues or learning gaps. It helps in diagnosing problems while screening further investigates and addresses these issues. The teacher has to assess the probable incidence of the problem. They have to do this by using a simple yes or no. Assessment defines the problem while screening identifies and treats it. Students' placement in the remedial course. When a student's performance is below average, assessments guide the placement into remedial courses designed to improve their academic performance. It means that if a student's evaluation is below average, in that case, remedial courses will be provided for them. Instructional planning. Instructional planning is a crucial process for teachers, helping them to design a structured approach to teaching a course. This process allows teachers to develop clear objectives, organize lessons, and choose appropriate teaching methods to clear objectives to effectively target the curriculum. Additionally, it enables teachers to cater to the diverse needs of students by incorporating differentiated instruction strategies. Instructional planning is a process for teachers. It helps a teacher to make a plan to target the course of study. Furthermore, it helps to address the diverse needs of students. Feedback and response. Providing feedback is essential in the educational process as it clarifies how students' grades are determined. Feedback highlights specific strengths and areas for improvement in students' work, offering constructive guidance. This process not only recognizes and rewards particular qualities in students' assignments but also encourages them to enhance their skills and understanding. This process helps to validate how students' marks are derived. It also identifies and prices specific character in students' work. In addition, it guides students to make improvement in their work. Inspiration. Inspiration or motivation is a key tool in education. It involves creating an environment and setting tasks that encourage students to engage and succeed. Understanding what motivates students helps educators design activities and a classroom atmosphere that fosters enthusiasm and a desire to learn. Inspiration or motivation is a very important tool. This tool provides information about the type of environment and task which helps in motivation. The purpose of the assessment. General purpose of assessment. The primary purpose of assessment is to evaluate and measure knowledge, skills, abilities, or performance in a particular area. Administrative purpose. General assessment. This assessment, a broad range of knowledge or skills to get a general sense of a person's abilities. Placement. Appropriate level assignment. Used to determine the appropriate level or class for a learner based on their current abilities. Exemption. Determines if a learner can skip certain courses or exams due to prior knowledge or experience. Certification. Confirms that an individual has met the standards required to receive a certification or license. Promotion. Assess whether an individual is ready to advance to the next level, grade, or position. Next, instructional purpose. Diagnosis. Identifies strength and weakness. Identifies specific strength and weakness often used to provide targeted support or intervention. Evidence of progress. Monitoring improvement. Tracks the progress of a learner over time to ensure they are meeting learning goals. Feedback to the respondent. Personalized feedback. Provides feedback to the individual on their performance to help them understand their strength and areas for improvement. Next, evaluation of teaching or curriculum. Evaluates the effectiveness of teaching methods or the curriculum in achieving learning outcome. Effectiveness evaluating of teaching or curriculum. Research purpose. Research purpose. Evaluation. Judging performance involves making judgments about the quality or success of a program, teaching method, or individual performance. Experimentation. Testing hypothesis used in research to test new methods, approaches, or hypotheses in education or other field. Next, knowledge about language learning and language use, understanding language acquisition. In language learning context, assessment help understand how language is learned and how it is used in different contexts. Fundamental components of assessment. 4 fundamental elements of learner-centered assessment. Number 1, formulate statement of intended learning outcome. Clearly define what students are expected to learn. These learning outcomes should be specific, measurable, and aligned with the overall goals of the course or program. Next, develop or select assessment measures. Develop or choose appropriate tools and methods to assess whether students have achieved the learning outcome. This can include test quizzes, assignments, projects portfolio or other forms of evaluation that aligns with the learning objectives. Create experiences leading to outcome. Design learning activities, assignments, and instructional strategies that provide students with opportunities to achieve the intended learning outcome. This involves structuring the learning process in a way that supports students in meeting those objectives. Discuss and use assessment result to improve learning. Analyze the assessment data to determine how well students are meeting the learning outcome. Using this information to provide feedback to students and to make adjustment to instruction and assessment methods to enhance learning. These components work together in a cyclical process to continually improve both teaching and learning. Difference between assessment and evaluation. Dimension of difference: content, timing, primary purpose. Assessment, formative. Assessment, meaning it occurs continuously throughout the learning process. Its main goal is to provide feedback and make improvements in learning and teaching. Evaluation, summative, meaning it happens at the end of a learning cycle. Its primary purpose is to measure the overall quality or success of the learning outcome. Orientation, focus on measurement. Process oriented, focusing on how the learning is progressing. It looks at the methods, strategies, and efforts used in learning. Product oriented, concentrating on what has been learned. It evaluates the final result or outcome of the learning process. Findings. Diagnostic, aiming to identify specific areas where improvement is needed. It provides detailed insights that help in addressing weakness. Judgmental, leading to a conclusive decision like a grade or score. It summarizes the overall performance without necessarily focusing on specific areas or areas for improvement. Administrator, reflective. It is based on internally defined criteria or personal goals. It encourages self-improvement and personal growth. Prescriptive, relying on externally imposed standards. It follows predefined benchmarks and often leads to external consequences like passing or failing. Next, ongoing modifiability of criteria. Flexible and can be adjusted as new insights or problems emerge. It adapts to the needs of the learner or the context. Fixed, with criteria set in advance. The measures are used to reward success or punish failure without much room for adjustment. Standards of measurement, absolute. Standards aiming for ideal or individual specific outcomes. It looks at whether certain goals have been met regardless of how others perform. Comparative. Standards often ranking or sorting performance. It compares individuals or groups against each other. Relation between objectives, cooperative, where the goal is mutual learning and growth. Both the assessor and the recipient can learn from the process. Competitive. Evaluation is competitive, often pitting individuals or groups against one another to determine who performs better. So, assessment is an ongoing, flexible, and process oriented activity aimed at improving learning, while evaluation is a final, fixed, and product oriented activity aimed at measuring learning outcome. Assessment. Assessment is a process aimed at understanding and improving learning performance or outcome. Evaluation, on the other hand, is a broader concept that involves making judgment about the value or effectiveness of something based on set standards or benchmarks. Is ongoing process. Assessment is continuous and happens throughout the learning or performance process. It helps in making adjustment and improvements as needed. Is positive. It leads to a positive outcome or improvement, but they are not inherently positive. They could also highlight failures. Is individualized. Assessments are often tailored to the individual, taking into account their unique needs, abilities, and progress. Provide feedback. One of the key purposes of assessment is to give constructive feedback that helps learners or employees improve. Require criteria. Assessment both involves using specific criteria or measures to evaluate progress or performance. Evidence driven. Decisions made during the assessment process are based on concrete evidence gathered through observation, tests, or other tools. Evaluation provides closure. It can provide closure by summarizing what has been learned or accomplished, often at the end of a specific period. Is judgmental. Evaluation involves making judgments or decisions based on the collected data and criteria, which often leads to conclusion about the overall effectiveness or values. It's applied against standards. Evaluations are typically conducted by comparing outcome or performance against predetermined standards or benchmarks. Shows shortfalls. Assessment help in identifying areas where improvement is needed, highlighting gap in knowledge or performance. Both assessment and evaluation require criteria. Both processes rely on specific criteria or measures to evaluate progress or success. Are evidence driven. Both are grounded in evidence to ensure that decisions are objective and based on factual information. So assessment is more about process, providing continuous feedback and support to learners or employers to help them grow and improve. It's tool used to guide development, making it a more formative approach. Evaluation, however, is about making judgment at specific points, often at the end of a project, course or period. It's more summative, providing a judgment on effectiveness, success, or value of what has been assessed. Both are critical in education, performance management, and many other fields, but they serve different roles in the overall process of measuring and improving outcome. Is assessment different than evaluation? Assessment purpose. The primary purpose of assessment is to increase quality by providing feedback for improvement. It's often formative, meaning it's used during the process of learning or development to help guide and enhance performance. Assessments are generally diagnostic and continuous. They are designed to identify strength, weakness, and areas for improvement. The focus is on the process and the progress being made rather than just the final outcome. It helps in shaping future actions. Evaluation. The primary purpose of evaluation is to judge quality based on predefined criteria or standards. It's often summative, meaning it occurs at the end of a process or project to determine overall success or effectiveness. Evaluation are typically judgmental and conclusive. They aim to measure the outcome and overall performance against the goals or benchmarks set at the beginning. The focus is on the final product, result, or impact, providing a summary of what has been achieved and whether the objectives were met. So, formative related to assessment, formative activities are ongoing and provide feedback that can be used to make improvements during the process. Summative related to evaluation, summative activities are final and provide a comprehensive overview of what has been achieved after the process is completed. So, assessment is about enhancing, improving quality over time, while evaluation is about making a judgment on the quality on the final product or performance. Categories of assessment: assessment of learning, assessment for learning, assessment as learning. Concept of assessment of learning: assessment from behavioristic perspective. In a behavioristic framework, assessment is focused on observable outcomes and measurable behaviors. The emphasis is on how well students can demonstrate what they have learned through tests, quizzes, and other standardized forms of evaluation. The behaviorist approach assumes that learning can be measured directly through performance or specific responses to stimuli, questions, or tasks indicate the extent of learning. Assessment: the extent of learning that has been taken place in a particular time. Assessment of learning is concerned with gauging how much learning has occurred during a specific period, such as a semester or school year. This type of assessment typically occurs at the end of an instructional period, example end of term exam, and provides a snapshot of student achievement. It measures the quantity of learning in terms of marks or grades. Quantitative measurement: assessment of learning qualifies learning outcome by assessing marks or grades that reflect the levels of knowledge or skills attained by students. The use of grade or score is intended to provide a clear numerical representation of how much a student has learned. It presents one's achievement in different criteria like high, low achievement, pass or fail, etc. Assessment of learning categorizes students' performance into levels of achievement such as high or low achievement or pass or fail. These categories help educators, parents, and students understand where a student stands relative to expectations and peers. It emphasizes achieving minimum level of learning. Assessment of learning often emphasizes ensuring that students reach a minimum level of competence or understanding in a subject area. The concept of minimum level of learning is crucial in ensuring that all students meet a basic standard of knowledge or skills before progressing to the next level of education or graduation or graduating. In summary, assessment of learning is a summative approach that focuses on evaluating the final outcome of learning. It uses standard measures to determine the quantity of learning, often in the form of grades or score, and categorizes students based on their achievement levels. The behavioristic roots of assessment of learning underscores its emphasis on observable and measurable outcomes, often geared towards ensuring that all students meet essential educational standards. Assessment of learning is periodical or terminal in nature. Assessment of learning is typically terminal, meaning it occurs at the end of a learning period, such as a semester or course. This allows for a comprehensive evaluation of what students have learned. It supports summative evaluation, semester end or term end examination. Assessment of learning aligns with summative assessment, which are designed to measure student learning at the conclusion of an instructional unit by comparing it against some standard or benchmark. It is end product of learning. It represents the culmination of the educational process, assessing the knowledge and skills students have acquired. It happens after completion of teaching. Timing. Assessment of learning is conducted after the teaching phase, meaning it evaluates the outcome rather than the learning process itself. Feedback received through assessment of learning hardly help the learners for future improvement. The feedback received from assessment of learning may not be timely or specific enough to help students make immediate improvement, as it often comes after the fact rather than during the learning process. Assessment of learning is valuable for gauging overall learning outcomes. It has limitations in providing formative feedback that could enhance ongoing learning. Balancing it with the formative assessment could create a more holistic approach to students' evaluation. Assessment for learning. It is based upon the constructivist approach of teaching learning assessment. Assessment for learning is an educational approach that emphasizes the importance of understanding the learning process rather than merely measuring the outcome. Constructivist approach. Assessment for learning is grounded in constructivism, which posits that learners construct their own understanding and knowledge of the world through experiences and reflecting on those experiences. In this context, assessment becomes a tool to facilitate learning rather than just a means to evaluate it. It assesses the process aspect of learning. Instead of focusing solely on the final result like grades, assessment for learning evaluates the process involved in learning. This includes how students engage with content, the strategies they use, and their ability to reflect on their learning. It expresses how learners learn. Understanding learning. Assessment for learning seeks to express how learners learn, highlighting their individual pathways to understanding. It recognizes that each student may grasp concepts differently, and assessment should be reflect this diverse learning process. It reports learning progress with descriptive indicators not only in mark and grades. Assessment for learning moves away from exclusively using marks and grades to report progress. It utilizes descriptive feedback, which provides insights into students' strengths and areas for improvement. This feedback is more informative and helps guide learners in their development. Assessment for learning is a broader term than assessment of learning. While assessment of learning focuses on measuring what students have learned, often through summative assessment, assessment for learning encompasses a wider range of evaluation methods aimed at enhancing learning throughout the educational journey. Assessment for learning is mostly done through formative and diagnostic evaluation. Assessment for learning predominantly employs formative assessment, which are conducted during the learning process to monitor student progress and provide ongoing feedback. Diagnostic assessments are used to identify students' existing knowledge and skills before instruction begins, allowing for tailored teaching strategies. Learning needs to be considered as continuum, so it is conducted through continuous and comprehensive assessment. Education should be viewed as a continuous process where assessment plays a pivotal role throughout the learning journey. Learners play a central role in assessment for learning. Students should be at the heart of the assessment for learning process, actively engaging in their own learning and assessment. Varieties of tools and techniques are used. A variety of assessment techniques should be utilized to cater to different learning styles and needs. It helps the learners for enhancing their learning by active participation in learning and activities. Active participation. Encouraging learners to engage actively in assessment helps deepen their understanding and enhances overall learning. It helps the learners achieving equity and equality in assessment component of the curriculum. Assessment for learning aims to provide fair assessment opportunities for all learners, ensuring that every student has the chance to succeed. It addresses diversities and varieties of background of the learners. Recognizing and accommodating the diverse background of learners is crucial for effective assessment. Teachers act as a facilitator, guide, initiator, and motivator for the learners. Educators should act as facilitators, guiding and motivating students while also encouraging self directed learning. Assessment as learning. When learners personally involved to monitor his or her own learning, learners are encouraged to assess their own understanding and skills, making them more engaged and responsible for their learning outcome. Feedback through self-assessment helps the learners to enhance his or her own learning. The learners critically evaluate situations, ask reflective questions for his or her own development. Learner him or herself understand his or her previous experience and achieve new knowledge through self-learning. Difference between assessment of learning and assessment for learning. Assessment of learning, as per behavioristic approach, focuses on observable behaviors and outcomes. As per constructivist approach, emphasizes learning as a process of constructing knowledge through experience and interaction. Not follow learner-centric approach of assessment. The assessment design does not prioritize individual learner needs or experiences. It follows learner-centric approach of assessment, tailors assessment methods to the individual needs and context of learners, is terminal and summative type of assessment, typically conducted at the end of a learning period to evaluate overall achievement, is continuous and formative type of assessment, ongoing assessment that inform instruction and provide feedback throughout the learning process. It uses traditional approach of pen-paper type of test. Predominantly use pen and paper test which may not fully capture a learner's understanding or skill. It uses varieties of assessment tools and techniques as per the diversity of learners. Utilizes a variety of assessment methods, example portfolio, project, self-assessments to accommodate different learning styles and abilities. Assessment of learning, it measures the end product of learning. It measures the process, emphasizes the learning process. Assessment of learning, it measures how much or quantity of learning in terms of grades or scores. Quantifies learning through grades or score. It measures how good and quality of progress of the learner. Evaluates the quality and progress of learners. It focuses on minimum level of learning. Concentrate on minimum acceptable levels of understanding. It helps learners to achieve minimum level of learning and construct their own learning. Support for learners aims to help learners reach their minimum level of learning levels and take ownership of their learning journey. Belated feedback doesn't help learners. Delayed feedback is ineffective for learner improvement. Learners' progress happens continuously through feedback. Continuous feedback fosters ongoing progress and development. This comparison highlights the importance of both assessment in educational context, where one aim at measuring outcome and the other at enhancing the learning experiences through feedback and support.